Welcome into a condensed version of Bleav in Panthers here on the Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by the fine folks over at FanDuel. Desmond Johnson in the house, holding it down for my partner, the Panthers' all-time leading rusher, Jonathan Stewart. So we had to go and get a sub, and what a sub we got from the Bucky Brooks show. Bucky Brooks in the house from Bleav. What's going on, Buck? How you doing?
Man, not too much. How is everything going? I have to tell you this. My younger brother, Kevin, is a huge Carolina Panthers fan. So this is going to make his day to have me talk about his beloved Panthers as he consumes some Panther content.
Beautiful, beautiful. And it's a different offseason for us because the past 4, 5, 8, 9 off seasons have basically been, what do we do to correct the way the ship is sailing? This is the first year really where we kind of feel like it's going the opposite direction and that they can maybe do, I ain't gonna say they're going to do like what the Patriots did between last offseason and this offseason, going from 4 wins to, Super Bowl runner-up, but anything's possible in the NFC South. So what we're going to do today, because it is kind of dead in terms of what the Panthers are doing front office-wise, I'll get you guys caught up on the latest news and notes. Of course, we talked about Luke Kuechly getting into the Hall of Fame last week. He had some press today, actually, but the main news coming out of the Panthers right now, and it'll start to ramp back up again in a couple of weeks as they get ready for free agency. They did re-sign long snapper JJ Jansen. It'll be his 18th season in the NFL, so he's been there through multiple tenures. He was there when Stu was there. He was there, I think, before Stu was there. So, he's been there for a while. He will return for his 18th season next year. They talked about that on X earlier today. While I have you, Buck, I wanted to get into – they switched it around a couple of years ago, and I think it makes more sense now, and I'm glad the league did this, where they used to have the draft first, and then they would have free agency period after the draft. And it kind of made it where it felt like sometimes my team would be reaching in the draft, like looking for places to kind of fill in holes on the roster. And then free agency happened, where now it's reversed. Free agency happens first, where teams can go out and shop and get vets to kind of fill some of these holes. So when you get to the draft, you're really kind of shopping for convenience as opposed to shopping for want. You don't have to reach for something. So in terms of Dan Morgan and his MO and what he's done here in Carolina, if you were Dan Morgan, what would you do, knowing this draft, knowing what you know in terms of the prospects that are out there and knowing what Carolina is lacking going into next season? What would you do if you're Dan Morgan? Would you do the obvious thing and go defense, which is what everyone's screaming for him to go after? Or would you do like he did last year and pull a fastball and draft the best wide receiver in the draft in the top 10 and who goes on to become rookie of the year and trust your judgment? What would you do if you're Dan Morgan here?
Well, one, knowing Dan Morgan, I was in Carolina when he was a player, but then also knowing his centers of influence, the people that he worked for, Brandon Beane up in Buffalo, Joe Shane and those guys, then in Seattle, he's going to take the best player available. And I think what they would like to do is really attack the glaring needs in free agency. So then you can go into the draft and just take the best player that's on the board at that spot. For the Panthers, I think it's really important to understand who they are and where they're at. Look, you win 8 games, you get into the playoffs. You had the Rams in a really competitive playoff contest that didn't go your way, but there's no momentum in terms of what you did last year doesn't really impact this year or the next year going in. And so you just want to make sure that you're looking at your team. You don't, I say, overvalue your own guys and try to put your team in a position where you're one of the top 7 teams in the NFC going into the season.
And the NFC is going to be wide open next season, it feels like, too. There's not really a team where, other than Seattle, you would imagine Seattle's going to continue on what they're doing. The NFC West, I'd imagine, depending on what happens with the Rams and the 49ers are banged up all year and still rattled off a bunch of wins. So I can't even imagine them healthy next year. The NFC West is an entity all to itself, but everything else in the NFC is kind of jumbled up. New coaches all over the place. And for once, the Carolina Panthers are kind of a symbol of steadiness. This is the second year in a row where we're going into the next season with the same coach, general manager, and head coach. So it's new for us. So it's fun to sit here and think about, okay, what do we do? What do we need? That kind of thing. And with free agency coming up first, I wanted to hit that first because we first need to start off with our own free agents. And for those that aren't aware, most of the free agents on this list are offensive linemen. 2 tackles, Jake Curran, Josh Nijman, who got some playing time this year because of injury. Brady Christensen and Austin Corbett are 2 guards. Christensen's important. Actually, Corbett's important because he plays center also. So he can kind of play both. Christensen can as well. Christensen actually played tackle when he was here rookie year. So they both can be interchangeable. and then Cade Mays, who became the starting center. There, are any of those guys, anyone that you want to, make sure you bring back? Is there a guy on this list of free agencies for Carolina that is a must, has to come back for Dan Morgan to sign? That includes Rico Dowdle, Christian Roseboom, the linebacker that flashed all this year, Nick Scott, the safety. Is there anyone on that list where you're like, if I'm Dan Morgan, I've got to make sure I at least bring that guy back from this batch that we had last year?
I think they're in a good position where they don't have to go after anybody. I think some of the things that you do when you're looking at free agency and you're looking at the draft, where's the strength of the draft? And the strength of the draft, I would say the offensive line is pretty solid. Not necessarily at the top, but really solid pieces. So as you're beginning to kind of play with your budget line and you're looking at some of the players that would come back, is it cost prohibitive to bring this player back when I can go and get maybe a cheaper, more efficient option in the draft? Or should I take some of these guys back and just, we feel so great about the continuity? I would think that a couple of those linemen will come back. You don't want 5 guys to depart. I think Brady Christensen has been a guy that's played a lot of games for them. He could be someone that is in play. But a lot of it depends on how much do they value the continuity at the line of scrimmage versus how much do they want to get better up front so they can run the football, they can protect Bryce Young, and eventually unleash an explosive passing game.
Talk to me a little bit about the franchise tag, because it feels like anytime I hear it from a player standpoint, they're totally against it. And I was going to ask you and Stu about this in terms of the player's perspective of the franchise tag, because now we're going to start seeing some questions with some teams in terms of should they put the franchise tag on this player or that player. For us, out of that batch of free agents I named, Rico Dowdle, I guess, is the only one that the fans would be screaming for. But if you get franchise tagged, if I'm not mistaken, you basically get guaranteed the average salary of like the top 5 at your position or something to that effect. Can you explain to the folks what the franchise tag is first before we get into using it or not?
Okay, so the franchise tag basically locks in a player that you want to retain. It guarantees them to be paid the average of the top 5 at the position. Right now, Rico Dowdle will be looking at a contract of $14 million for the 1 year.
That's Christian McCaffrey.
It becomes fully guaranteed when the player signs the deal. But what it does, it keeps them off the open market. Players hate it because it doesn't provide them with the long-term security that they want. Most players want multiple year deals. That leads to a bigger signing bonus, bigger guaranteed money, and those things. Some, however, will sign the franchise deal quickly because it's guaranteed. I got it right then. If you come to me next year with a franchise deal, it now has to be paid at 120% of what this current one is. And so the money escalates pretty quickly, but players don't like that. However, we have seen people who have parlayed the franchise tag into big lucrative contracts. I think about Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins was the first name that came to mind.
I think about how he's been able to parlay it. I think about like how Dak Prescott manipulated the vehicle. There are a bunch of different ways that it can go down. And so players hate it because you don't get the long contract, but you do get guaranteed money, and it's one big lump sum that you get for a 1 year deal.
It feels like it only helps like elite quarterbacks, like in what you just mentioned, because you just mentioned, well, Kirk Cousins isn't an elite, but good quarterbacks that can kind of get extra money than they probably wouldn't have gotten, like a Kirk Cousins, because he wouldn't have gotten top 5 money if he just negotiated out on his own, more than likely. So for him to get that money for a year and then get tagged again, how many times has Kirk Cousins been tagged in his career?
Look, I think he played on it back to back, and that really drove up the cost.
That was in Washington, right?
Yeah, but I would say this when it comes to it. The franchise tag can be used successfully if you're willing to bet on yourself and if you can continue to produce at a high level. When I was working for the Seattle Seahawks, Walter Jones, Hall of Fame offensive tackle, played on the franchise tag back-to-back years, then got his deal. And what it did, it paid him in the top 5 for 2 consecutive years, and then they had to build a contract off of that. So there are some advantages if the ball goes your way in terms of the way that you play and how you negotiate, but players always want that money in hand early as opposed to having to earn it to get it by having back-to-back contract years where they put up big numbers in those years.
Do you see anybody on that list for the Panthers that you expect them to tag?
No, I don't. I think they'll hold on to it. I don't think I think it's one of the times that they can keep it in their pocket and really earmark the money for others who are coming up, or put it in the piggy bank for the guys that down the line you're eventually going to have to pay.
So with that, having said that, so a lot of these guys, honestly, a lot of the guys I'm seeing on this list, they may be able just to, sign back on 2-year deals or whatever. Those linemen, especially, unless they just get obscene money offers from some other teams that are offensive line hungry. I would not mind bringing back Christian Roseboom. I thought he played really well towards the end of the season, and really once they switched him and Trevin Wallace, because they were playing opposite and they had Roseboom playing basically the mic and they had Trevin playing the other. When they switched him and they had Trevin as the mic, it freed up Roseboom to just roam the field, and he started playing a lot better. Wallace did too, until he suffered, I believe it was a shoulder injury that put him out the rest of the year. So I'd be curious to put them back together and see what Dan does in the draft. And that's where we're going to shift to now. Because this is your corner here. And I was telling you off camera, I don't get a chance to watch a whole lot of college football. I know Stu is he's a former Oregon Duck, so he follows Oregon. He's a big Oregon fan, and he'll tell me about 10 guys from Oregon that he wants us to draft. But I don't get a chance to follow it very often. People that know me, they know that my company actually runs the terrestrial radio broadcast for North Carolina A&T. So Saturdays I'm usually busy doing Aggie football, and I don't get a chance to really just watch, Michigan, Ohio State, or whatever it may be. Knowing what you've seen this year, if I give you a position like for the Panthers, Ike Ekwonu is going to be out for the year, our left tackle. He just signed his 5th-year extension. The team had just gave it to him maybe a month prior, and then he hurts his leg. He's going to probably be out the majority of next year. Left tackle. Where's the depth for left tackle in this draft this year? Is this something where Carolina needs to think about doing this in the first, or can they get a left tackle to kind of fulfill that in the draft, or do you think they go free agency?
Well, I mean, I think if they want to fill it, obviously you want to take a first-round talent, because it is a drop-off. But there's a lot of talented players. I would say where the Panthers are picking in the 20s, you're talking about Caleb Lemoon from Utah being available, 6'6", 304 pounds, real natural left tackle, probably some of the best feet that you will find in this draft class. But it's about his size and his frame, and can he be a physical presence in that regard? If you're not looking at him, then you kind of get down the line, and you have a few other guys that showed up. So Max, I don't want to mess up his name, Ahanachor from Arizona State, big kid from Arizona State, showed up really well down at the Senior Bowl, 6'6", 330 pounds. You're talking about day 2, massive mauler brawler, the feet, the lateral quickness to be able to move people off the ball. He's someone that's going to be of interest for them. It really comes down to how they prioritize kind of fixing or upgrading the offensive line. There are a lot of guys that are going to be available. Isaiah World from Oregon, who's someone Jonathan Stewart would absolutely love. He is someone that can play on the left side. He's a transfer from Nevada. He has that mauler brawler mentality. They can run the football behind him. He's physical, more so than fundamental, but he certainly has the tools. And so I think if you're the Panthers, regardless of what you do with Ike Ekwonu, day 2 will probably be somewhere where they will use a pick on an offensive lineman just to make sure they have an insurance policy if he doesn't come back and be the player that they want him to be.
So the Panthers have 7 picks this year in the draft. They don't have a 7th-round pick, but they did pick up an extra 5th-round pick from Minnesota when they traded off Adam Thielen in the preseason. So right now they're picking 19th overall in the first round, and they've got 3 picks in the first 83 picks there, 2 in the first 51. So they really can make some moves. And we've seen Dan Morgan moving and doing his thing in the war room during draft day, constantly looking for extra picks. He's not afraid to trade down. He's not afraid to trade up. And he's doing what I've wanted them to do, which is expand the depth of this team. Like the past 3 years in particular, we lost games because we had no one behind the starter. Like the starter gets hurt, someone comes in, or there's no one there. They have to go get somebody off the street or practice squad to fill in. And they're playing 3 days later, and we're in like November, so it's like that happened over and over again. Dan seemed to recognize that. And I feel like Dan actually really nailed the rookie class last year that he brought in. Like pretty much the majority of the guys he picked ended up being contributors in some way, shape, or form throughout the course of this year. Even at the back end of that draft, he was picking some guys that really contributed. So another position that may be of need. It depends on what happens, but running back, of course, it was Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle sharing the load this year. Trevor Etienne, the rookie, got a couple snaps as well. But by all accounts, it sounds like Rico is not going to be re-signed to Carolina. They didn't necessarily have a falling out. It just kind of seemed like they both recognized at the end of the season that Rico would be better suited going someplace else where he's not sharing the carries, and Chuba finally got healthy. They do have Jonathan Brooks, the rookie they drafted last year in the second round out of Texas, that many considered to be the best running back in that draft, was coming off of a leg injury, missed most of the year, got going. I think he played 2 games last year, got hurt in the second game after looking pretty good, actually, and he was out again this past year. Do you depend on Jonathan Brooks, who's had 2 major knee injuries in the past 3 years, or do you look for a running back in this draft, or can you do both?
I think you do a little bit of both. I don't think you necessarily count on him. I think you look at Trevor Etienne to see what he did over the course of the season. You watch how he progresses over the offseason. You have Chuba Hubbard as your starter. And then Jonathan Brooks is a bit of an asterisk. Like, you put him in, he's a wild card. If you get anything out of him, great. If not, you look probably on day 3 to find another one to throw into the rotation. And what's interesting is there are a couple different ways that you could do this. If you're the Panthers, some people like if Chuba Hubbard is the 1, you have a change of pace guys the 2, and then the 3 is more like number 1, Chuba Hubbard. If that is the case, then there are 2 names I'll give you. One would be Nicholas Singleton from Penn State. He hurt his foot in the Senior Bowl, but he was dynamic for the Nittany Lions. And then I'll say the other one would be his teammate, Katron Allen, who is also a big physical back. He can come downhill. A lot of what the Panthers have to decide is, as they're building out their running back room, how do they want the pieces of the puzzle to fit? Do you want pieces that are similar, or do you want a little diversity so you have different flavors when different running backs come into the game? That's ultimately up to Dave Canales and Dan Morgan to determine what's the best approach for the team that they have as they try and get ready for another playoff run.
Bleav personality Bucky Brooks in the house here on Bleav and Panthers. You can watch and listen to the Bucky Brooks Show weekly on the Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by FanDuel. One of the things that actually surprised me last year during this time, I was one of the ones on Twitter getting arguments on a daily basis with people who were adamant that we should draft a wide receiver with our first round pick. And to me, it was just utter insanity. I was like, we just had like the worst defense in NFL history, and you're talking about bringing in a wide receiver. Doesn't make any sense. So we did. We ended up doing that. Shout out to Dan Morgan for basically throwing the smoke screen up the entire time. Like, no one really knew except for like Bryce Young and a couple people in the building. I'm wondering if they're planning on doing something similar again. There is a player that Stu's been high on, Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon. He feels like he's going to be in that area with the Panthers picking 19th. Would the Hornets, see, I got Hornets on the brain because they're playing so well right now. Would the Panthers, with the Panthers double dip for Bryce Young and get him a tight end when they've drafted Jatavian, I forgot Sanders. Sanders. They drafted him 2 years ago. They just drafted the kid from Notre Dame last year in the middle rounds. They've got tight ends, but they don't have one that can like change the game. And by all accounts, Sadiq might be that. What's your thoughts on Kenyon Sadiq? Would he be a good mix in this Panther offense?
I mean, he could be a really good mix. Kenyon Sadiq is unique. This is a really good tight end class in general. If they do want someone that is a game changer, Sadiq is that guy. He can work over the middle of the field. He's smooth. He's fluid. He does a good job of creating and exploiting mismatches at the second level. He also has the ability to block in line and off the ball. So he has the ability to do everything. The one thing that you're thinking about when you're kind of categorizing people in rounds, when you're talking about a first round talent, you're talking about a game changer. And so even though they've tried to piecemeal the position with some day 3 guys and some day 2s, if you're talking about, hey, we really want to attack this need, you throw a first round pick at it to make sure that your quarterback, Bryce Young, continues to progress as a franchise player.
Because, see, I am from the last year, it caught me by surprise when they took Ted McMillan. But then I'm also in the mindset of, if you have a top 10 pick, you probably need to pick somebody that's going to be have the opportunity to be a game changer, like someone that can actually impact the game themselves. They're touching the ball, and some like a skill position player of some sort, or someone who's really good at cornerback or whatever it may be, that are out on an island. when you get from like 11 to 20, you kind of go either way in terms of what's there. You kind of let the board come to you, in my opinion. And Carolina's in an interesting position because they can kind of afford to be aggressive if they want to. If somebody's on the board and they really, really want them, they can move up 4 or 5 spots in where they are and not really have to give up a whole lot to do so. The other position of need, really, honestly, it's probably, it's edge rusher. Carolina could not get any pressure on quarterbacks this year. Derek Brown can only do so much. I mean, they're like triple teaming this guy, and he's tossing people like out the club like it's, they're sacks of potatoes, but he needs some help. Nick Scorton came on, the rookie this past year.
Good player.
And he should grow from year 1 to year 2. I do expect that. Who's some edge rushers out there you might think would be still sitting there right around 19-20 that would be a good fit for the Panthers and Ejiro Ivero's scheme? He kind of plays it's kind of a 3-4. It kind of shifts based on who they're playing against. He's kind of playing a nickel, really, is what it feels like half the time. He usually keeps an extra defensive back out there that can crash down. And we saw that with Ransom this year, the rookie. He was doing a lot of that with him. Who's the edge rusher that you got an eye on that might be a good pick, about 19-20 picks in for the Panthers?
Well, I would think the middle to the bottom of the first round, you guys, Ruben Bain and David Bailey are probably going to be off the board. Avery Reese will be off the board. So that's going to probably leave you with a couple of names. And one is going to be Akeem Messidor from Miami. He played opposite Ruben Bain. They were terrific in the postseason. Finished the year, he had 7 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. But he is a guy that I kind of equate to being more Robin to Batman. If you got a dominant pass rusher somewhere on the front line, he can be the perfect complement to that. Effort is great, energy, relentless, gets after it, plays physical. The one thing that people will talk about is his age. He'll be 24, 25 years old entering the draft. People will say, like, hey, that could be prohibitive when it comes to a second contract. I'm not in the camp to worry about the second contract. Let's make sure he's good enough to get through the first one before we worry about that. Another player, Keldrick Falk, is going to be someone that you hear about, Auburn. He is a more powerful playmaker off the edge. I would say right now he is better as a run defender than a pass rusher. But those who look at him, he's going to remind them a little bit of Jadeveon Clowney in terms of a power player off the edge. Jadeveon Clowney made most of his biggest plays against the run at the line of scrimmage. That's how Falk plays out. But Falk is young, 21 years of age, still has a lot of growth, developmental potential in his game, but he plays hard. And even though he's not kind of refined, man, his ability, his traits, his talent makes him an intriguing prospect.
I've always thought that Dan Morgan was biding his time to find a new Panther middle linebacker. And the Panthers are pretty known for producing high-end middle linebackers, from all the way from Sam Mills, who has a statue in front of the building, to, Dan Morgan himself, who I think he might still hold the record for most tackles in a Super Bowl. Actually, I need to go look that up. But for a while, he held it for Super Bowl 38 against the Patriots. He held that record. John Beeson, Luke Kuechly. It's just like a lineage of like guys that we've had at that position. And the Panthers have been at their best when they have a quarterback on the offense and the defense. And the last time we had that was Cam Newton and Luke Kuechly. And Luke Kuechly's going in the Hall of Fame in August that we found out last week. And Cam is probably going to go eventually himself. Is there a middle linebacker that you see in this draft that's in that same vein of a John Beeson, Dan Morgan, Luke Kuechly? I know they're all unicorns basically, but is there someone that's like that cerebral in your mind that could kind of slide to Carolina? Because all those guys shine from rookie year. Like, they didn't need time to step up. That's why I'm kind of tentative towards like a Trevin Wallace, because this will be year 3, going in, and he got injured at the end of this year. But usually with our Panther linebacker, the middle linebackers usually know right away, like, oh, that's the next guy. And we've had 4 or 5 of them. Is there a guy out there that you see at middle linebacker or inside linebacker that might be able to potentially be that first round pick the Panthers go with?
I would say CJ Allen from Georgia will be someone that is in that range, in the 19-20 area, if they're looking to do something in the first round. Old school middle linebacker, great communicator, physical, kind of a throwback at the position. He is definitely worthy of being a guy that can come off the board there. But I'll give you some other names to look at linebacker. Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. Speedy playmaker, can do a bunch of different things. When you think about the common denominator between those guys that you mentioned being greats for the Panthers, speed, quickness, sideline to sideline ability was a big part of it. He has that. There's a guy that I looked at from Cincinnati, Jake Golday, Cincinnati inside linebacker, more of a long 6'4" physical guy that can also play on the edges. Probably more a Sam linebacker in the pros, but when you talk about linebackers and being able to play in the nickel, the versatility that Evero likes to utilize in his defense, he's someone that can play off-ball linebacker, can go outside and come off the edge on occasion and do a bunch of different things. All those players have enough flavor to kind of demand that position for the Panthers.
Bucky Brooks joining us from the Bucky Brooks Show. You can find that on Bleav's podcast network. Follow us, rate us on the YouTube channel for Bleav, and of course, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Luminary, wherever you get your podcasts, you can get those there. Before I let you go, Bucky, I want to take advantage of the fact that I had you here and go around the league real quick. Just an hour ago, ESPN's Kimberly Martin reporting that Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans will return in 2026. His contract is up with the Bucs. The Evans is now expected to explore his free agent options. Where would it be the best spot for Mike Evans to land in the NFL? You're talking about a guy that's had like 10,000-yard seasons, going to go in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. He's over 30. I think he's like 30.
Yeah, he's well over. Yeah, he's over 30. I would say the Buffalo Bills would be the perfect place for him. Ooh. And the reason why is they need an established player to go with Josh Allen. Even though they've tried to piecemeal it, Keon Coleman was a draft pick that they took. They've had a bunch of other guys right now. Khalil Shakur were probably rated as their number one. They need a proven commodity on the outside, and they haven't had that since Stephon Diggs left. And if you get Mike Evans, big body playmaker, expands the strike zone for Josh Allen. But more importantly, someone's going to bring that urgency that you want when it comes to chasing a championship. Last year or two of his NFL run, he's really going to be at it, and he can help raise the level of play of all those pass catchers around.
Wide receiver for Dallas, George Pickens, looks like he may hit free agency unless the Cowboys tag him. Do you think the Dallas Cowboys will tag George Pickens, or do you think they'll be able to sign him without?
Oh, no, they're going to tag him. They can put a tag on him just because, one, just want to make sure that what he showed last year, he will continue to be that player in Dallas. Two, it just makes sense to tag him because you have that ability while you're working through the thing. You don't want him to hit the open market because people were already talking about that being a $32, $3, $4 million annual deal for him. Don't let him get out of the house. Make sure you retain him because the combo with him and CeeDee Lamb might be the best 1-2 punch on the perimeter that we've seen in the league.
Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill was released this week in a flurry of roster moves. That was on Monday. They also released former Pro Bowl linebacker Bradley Chubb, per multiple sources, along with offensive lineman James Daniels and wide receiver Nick Westbrook. Akini, I think I'm pronouncing that right. But the main one was Hill. I don't know if it was by surprise. I think we all thought that they may do something to that effect. Hill dislocated his knee and tore his ACL in week 4, missed the rest of the season. He turns 32 in March, and now he'll be a free agent for the first time in his 10-year career. He claims he will be back. He posted on Instagram after being released and said he will be back. For a wide receiver whose career has been kind of predicated on his ability to run away from people. If you're an NFL team, do you kick the tires on Tyreek Hill? Because I look at it like it might be worth a shot depending on what he's asking for, but I'm trying to think. It almost feels like he has to go to certain spots. Like, do you think like Kansas City might come a calling and be like, yeah, come on, let's see at least what you got, that kind of thing? Or where would be a good spot for Tyreek Hill if he comes back even 60, 70% of himself?
I think a lot of before you even get to the talent, I think you got to make sure the temperament is right. By all accounts, all the things that were going on in Miami, it was a lot. It was more to it than just how he played on the field. Can he come in and be a good teammate? Can he be a good leader? Can he do all the things culturally that you want your best pros to be able to do? Then it comes down to the age and where he sits coming off of a torn ACL and a dislocated knee. Is he going to be the same kind of factor that he was on the perimeter for years? Can he get back to being a flash of the player that was an all-pro player that had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons and those things? I think a lot of his stuff would be the one-on-one conversations that you have with him, the background information that you get from the Dolphins people when they talk about how he was in the building with his teammates and those things. And then the final part would be the workout. What does he look like when we finally see him? Will he continue to be the fastest man in the league, or is he going to be something less than that? If he's less than that, can he still have a way to impact the game? A lot of questions when it comes to Tyreek Hill and whether you sign him or not.
All right, so final question, and we're going to ask this. We're running through a string of guests here in our Panthers offseason, and it's way too early. It's February 17th. We just had the Super Bowl like last week. What's your way too early prediction for Super Bowl 61?
Ooh, way too early. Let's go with the Denver Broncos and the LA Rams in Super Bowl 61. Denver Broncos. Yeah, Matthew Stafford is coming back. He announced that at NFL Honors. And since this is the swan song, him in the twilight, I think that makes sense for them because they're well constructed. You guys saw it in the playoffs. And then for the Denver Broncos, man, if Bo Nix plays in the AFC Championship game, they probably are representing the AFC in Super Bowl 60. Motivated team,
probably, yeah.
Great defense. Vance Joseph coming back. To me, they're one of the teams to beat when we go and look at next year's season.
Are we burying the Kansas City Chiefs too soon? Like, are we? I'm worried. I think people think it's going to be a repeat of what happened to the Patriots, the Brady Belichick Patriots, where they, 3 Super Bowl wins in 4 years or whatever, start the season, everything's crazy. And then there's like a drought for like 8-9 years where they don't make it to the Super Bowl. And then at the tail end of Brady's career, they go back again, like 3 times in 4 years or whatnot. Are we entering that drought period, or is this different? You think they're done for a bit?
It's over. I know you're scared. I know you're
wishful thinking, Bucky.
No. I feel like you're treating them. I feel like you're treating them like it's Candyman. You're scared to go in the bathroom and say Candyman 3 times.
I spent so much time trying to avoid giving them the praise they probably deserve. I was one of the last people to give them flowers. I was like, "There's no way this is going to work." What y'all are doing? Y'all are doing trick plays in the huddle and all this behind the back passes and stuff. And then it literally took one. I think it was the playoff game against Houston, where Pat Mahomes, they were down 35 points or something early, and then Pat Mahomes just literally took over. It was the one where he had that run where he ran down the sideline, he tippy-toed, and everybody thought he was going to go out of bounds. Yeah, he ran 35 more yards down the field. That one I was like, okay, the Chiefs are a little different. I don't know if Kelsey will be back. I would imagine he's probably going to retire at this point, but and honestly, I thought we would have heard something by now. But if I won't count out Andy Reid anymore. I won't count out Pat Mahomes anymore. He was due a bad season, and I guess you could call this a bad season, but you're writing them out. You're saying that they're not going to be a factor here for a bit. Why do you say that?
I just look at the way the team is constructed. They're in salary cap purgatory. You have Travis Kelce, declining player, probably on his way out. You haven't been able to fix the wide receiver position. Rashee Rice is your number one, but he's nothing like what they had when they had Tyreek Hill.
Right.
Running game is a non-factor. There's no one in the backfield that you're scared of. Defensively, they got to fix the front line. Chris Jones is getting older. They have some pieces, and Andy Reid is one of the best coaches that we've ever seen. But to think that this team is going to get right back, it's going to take a minute.
You made some good points. And plus, Andy Reid is how old? He's in his late 60s, right?
I mean, he's old. It's time. He's up there and all that. I just feel like it's time. I think we can turn the page on them and we're on to the next.
I think that was the main issue with this past regular season, because really for the past 15 plus years, there's always been some sort of Death Star that the whole league is aiming at, whether it was the Patriots and then the Chiefs kind of took that mantle. We thought it was going to be the Eagles, but the Eagles are great one year, the next year. So we don't really know what that is. But this year there really wasn't one. We didn't want to crown it Seattle. We still don't want to crown Seattle that next team, even though most people are kind of they're probably going to be the ones to get back. People still don't trust Sam Darnold. People still don't believe that Seattle was as good as they were. They believe they're as good as they were in that game, but I don't know if they believe the franchise is as good over multiple years going forward.
Well, you're not a believer. You don't believe in the Seahawks.
We had Sam Darnold. We had him here. And it hurts that all the quarterbacks that went through our quarterback room for a 3-year stretch all left and went on to do great things. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, they all went off to, even Joe Brady, who was running the quarterback room, is now the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So
amazing.
I don't know. It almost feels like they snuck up on everybody. They were the best team in the league that nobody was really talking about until it got down to the point where you just had to pick them because they were playing the Patriots, and nobody really believed the Patriots going into it. And we saw why in that Super Bowl. I don't know. I feel like no one's going to look at Seattle next year like they're the new Chiefs. I don't believe, right? Because you even picked the Rams to get to the Super Bowl. So
yeah, I picked the Rams, but they're close. I thought they were the two best teams in the league last year, the Rams and the Seahawks. And what I would say about the Seahawks, talent-wise, up front, they're monsters at the point of attack. Like their defensive line can get after it. They rebuilt the offensive line. The question that you have is offensive coordinator and everybody, because you're a Panthers guy and you saw Sam Darnold, everybody's waiting for the clock to strike midnight.
Yes.
Everyone is waiting on Cinderella to come on back. Come on back. And it didn't happen in the playoffs.
It never happened.
Kept waiting for him to turn to a pumpkin, and it never happened. But next year, they're going to be those same questions, and they'll have to answer that. But I think they're well positioned to do it. The NFC will be competitive because it's wide open, and you just don't know who the teams are. The Philadelphia Eagles are super talented, but there are a lot of talented teams. People are going to jump on the Chicago Bears bandwagon.
Oh, yeah.
Why not even the Carolina Panthers, given the way that Bryce Young started to play down the stretch and the way that he was able to win games in the clutch. So the great thing about the league has found a way to sell hope for 32 franchises this time of year, every year. And once again, everybody feels like this is the year that they can flip it around and their team can end up in Super Bowl 61.
And the NFL is the best league at that in terms of parity. And I mean, pretty much the whole league is 500. You're going to have like 4 teams that are well below, and you're going to have 4 teams that are well above, but everyone else is right around 2 wins above 500, 2 wins below. Like they're all about the same. And I agree. I mean, this year, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who had Seattle versus New England in the Super Bowl back in like August or whatever. So like it does feel like 2 fresh teams that no one's even thinking about getting to the Super Bowl might get there. New England won 4 games the year before. So it's like, I can see it. I can see it happening. I'm not at that point where I'm like, Carolina can do it, because normally we're all giddy and excited. Like, yeah, Carolina's going to have a great year. Stu would be in here, but they're going 17-0 and all this other stuff. I'm not there yet. I've learned my lesson on this podcast to not jump over the cliff too soon. I got to see what they do in the draft and free agency and everything else. But you've given us a lot of info here that we can get through as we get closer to free agency and the draft. There'll be busy going forward here. Shortly, the franchise tag window just opened today, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or was it?
They can start. Yeah, they can start. They can start talking about it, and
so we'll start seeing
March 9th.
Yeah, we'll start seeing some teams put some tags on some players if they can't get deals done. I don't expect Carolina to use their tag, so we'll be able to keep that in our pocket, like Bucky said earlier in the pod. Make sure you rate and subscribe this. If you're on the Bleav YouTube channel, go to the Bleav and Panthers playlist. And click on it. When you go in, you can make it notify you whenever we have a new episode up and going. Stu will be back with me next week. We'll continue on this journey of trying to figure out what the needs are of the Carolina Panthers going into 2026. But for Bucky Brooks, this is Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Bleav in Panthers podcast here on Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by FanDuel. Everyone keep pounding.